Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests on. We have Shanay.
Okay, how about you?
Good. I am great. So listen, I want to get to this topic because tonight we're not talking politics, and I know politics is your jam, and I know you got a
Yes.
lot going on. But I just learned something amazing about you. You are you have a relative who was part of the Little Rock Nine. Okay, so for those that don't know, tell us what the Little Rock Nine were,
Yes.
and then talk about your relative.
Yes. The Little Rock Nine were nine teenagers who desegregated Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. They did it about 60 years ago, last
Mm-hmm.
month. They
Mm-hmm.
desegregated Central High School, and it changed the trajectory, I think, of the civil rights movement as well.
And
And
tell us the name of your relative. I'm sorry.
yes, it's my contact in our family, and we talk about him a lot and talk about his legacy and the legacy of service and the legacy of being a trailblazer and committed to equality and justice for our country.
And so, is this maybe one of the reasons why you are so passionate about politics and organizing the community and making sure that people who are supposed to be at the table, who should have a voice, have that through you?
Yes, I would say my grandma, his first cousin, ingrained in us because she lived in Little Rock at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about him, talked about the movement, the civil rights movement, talked about what it meant to be a family with history, that American history that changed this country. So it was ingrained in us. We had to know that. My kids are grown. They had to know it. It was passed on to us. And again, that's our cousin's legacy. We talk about it every anniversary that comes up. I remind people, not just in my family, but my friends in our community as well, that what
Mm-hmm.
happened in Little Rock, what they went through, it was torture. Those kids, they were nothing but teenagers. They were teenagers that went through this with basically little or no protection except for the National Guard. And you had the entire country looking in at you and observing your every movement for your first few days of school. That's tremendous pressure. I can't complain. I complain about stuff and then I realize what my cousin went through, and I just have to kind of take a step back, and it humbles me. It really
Mm-hmm.
does.
Mm-hmm. So this was your aunt. What did you say, your aunt or your grandmother?
Oh, my grandmother's first cousin.
Okay, so your grandmother's first cousin, can you walk us through some of the things that were shared in terms of what that experience was like? Because when you say, there were all these people that were observing them and trying to fight them and trying to dissuade them from going to school, talk about a certain level of bravery and maturity. Because I'm gonna tell you, Shanae, I can't say, even at the age that I am, that pressure, what we see in videos, I don't know that any of us would be able to handle that.
Ah, well, I know from like family lore and family history, I can say that it was really tough. From what I got from my older relatives, is that it was very traumatic for him and that experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it lasted with him for the rest of his life. So that's the other part. You see all the pageantry and the rewards and everything, but we don't talk about the other side, the
Mm-hmm.
trauma. He
Mm-hmm.
was a teenager. Here he is from the South,
Mm-hmm.
from Arkansas. Our family lived in Prairie, Arkansas, Hazen Prairie, Arkansas, a little town that probably half a block,
Okay.
and that's where they lived. And our
Mm-hmm.
family, still has, uh, we still have family there, but it's, small town Arkansas going into this big city school. Little Rock is big city compared to Hazen Prairie,
Mm-hmm.
but going into that environment is really traumatic. It really is, and documenting his experience, reading about it, listening to family members talk about his experience. It's, if we were to put him in today's experience, he'd get counseling. He'd
Mm-hmm.
receive, we'd understand where his pain is. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think we would laud him for sharing those feelings. But from, like I said, from a family perspective, we're very proud of him. But talking about that other side, that trauma, it really impacted our family too.
So talk about how the trauma impacted you. I got to bury my feelings and I just have to push on. And you're right. In modern times now, we would say, oh, go get a therapist, go get a counselor. Let's all sit together and share our feelings and commiserate around each other. And as, leaders and community advocates, we can do that now. But then the fear and the danger was even greater. I mean, people were trying to literally kill you. When we see those pictures and we see the video, there are people throwing rocks and sticks. I have heard stories of people trying to poison the food of the students. And I'm like, okay, so here you are in school just trying to get an education, and something as simple as a peanut butter sandwich or a plate of food can become your undoing if you're not cautious.
Yeah, we take that for granted right now. And from my own family, our discussions about this, we're very proud, very, very proud. And we're one of those families, and, you're not, it's not okay now, but you just sucked it up and just went through it. Mm-hmm. We didn't say much when it came to, that kind of, when you're facing that racism, we just did what we had to do. And I still have that kind of, I've been programmed that way to just do what I have to do, worry about that stuff later. And I'm still trying to deprogram myself. I think that's been a family trait passed down in our Thomas family. Yeah, my grandma, my great grandma, yeah, all the Thomases and my aunts and everything. Yeah, that's been passed on, and they remember what it was like in Arkansas and the things they've been through. Because I can tell you, like, doing not just knowing the history of my family, but doing genealogy and the research, there was a lot of trauma. It was a lot of a death there, losing siblings. My great grandma, my great grandpa, their experiences, and don't laugh, but my great grandpa, his uncle, got hit and kicked in the head by a donkey. And
wow.
Yeah, and he never recovered from that. So it's, you laugh about a donkey kicking you, but he never recovered from that. So that that trauma too, and then the desegregation, loss of siblings, stillbirths, all that kind of stuff. It was a mess, but I don't know how they did it. I don't know how my cousins did it. I don't know how my grandparents, my grandmother did it, and my aunts did it, and my great grandparents did it. I don't know. And my great grandparents. In fact, his grandmother, my grandmother's grandmother, she lived a long time.
Wow.
She lived until 1977, September. Mm-hmm. I don't know how my family did it. I'm still, like I said, in awe of the things that my family's experienced in Arkansas, even up north now. And my cousin's end days, he moved from Arkansas to Ohio. Eventually, when he passed, he was buried in Los Angeles as well.
Okay.
With his daddy, Ellis. Yeah.
Okay. Do you still have family in Arkansas in that same town?
Yeah, they're still there, but I don't know if they're in Hazen. we still have like other families. We still have land down there.
Very good. Yes, you should keep it.
Yeah, so, I tell you, don't sell grandma's house.
That's right. Don't sell grandma's house. Don't sell your parents' house, because you never know.
Don't sell your land either.
Don't sell it because it's valuable. But as soon as people die, everybody comes to be buried back home in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, no, because you can see it with certain folks. Some people wanted to act like this was 1950s, and I'm like, nope, I'm not getting ready to have an Emmett Till moment, because I'm from Detroit, and no, you're not going to talk to me that way. However, I know where I am. And then you would have other moments where you would come across your own and you were like, Oh, is this what you
Mhm.
do to survive? No, no, thank you. No, no, no. It's beautiful, but no, that's not what I want to do. But
Yeah.
there's a
Just
lot of history. I can
just a little
go
tidbit, and
ahead.
I apologize.
It's
Before
okay.
before the Thomases moved to Hazen Prairie, they're from Tupelo, Lee County.
Tupelo, Mississippi.
Yep.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay.
Yep. I love my family genealogy. I go back and that line. We have the name Stewart family, and some of our ancestors were free in the early during the Revolutionary War time. In fact, some migrated here to Cass County from Virginia. I love genealogy. You already know I can go talk to
No,
you
you
about
do.
that all day.
So you know I gotta ask you because I have some stewards in my family too. Is it STU or STEW?
STEW.
Okay, we're STU. So
Mm-hmm.
and that's on my
But
mom's side of the family.
but also I would say to check if you can go far back, um, because there are towns in Virginia that were nothing but Stewarts, and they were free blacks,
Ah,
and there were variations of the names.
okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
See the things that we learn, and this is why history lives within us, and this is so important. All right, so let's get back to your ancestor. So
Ooh, I got
when
more.
I know you do. So when did you learn about Jefferson Thomas?
Oh goodness. Oh.
Like when you were one, like this is
Like,
your relative.
yes, yeah, my grandmother
Okay.
did not play. We
Okay.
had to know. I was growing up with that. I had to know
Okay.
about my family history. It was ingrained in us. We were taught that. That was something to be proud of in our family because that's what was expected,
Mm-hmm.
for us to do something to make a different service. Not we can't I can never make the sacrifice that he made, but
Mm-hmm.
we were ingrained in we would talk about service and community and equality and making and standing up for what's right. That's was always pushed in my head. Besides education, 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 I sound like my grandmother. That's what she pushed: service, community, equality. We're out there speaking on behalf of people who need access to care or access to society the most. That's what we do. We advocate.
That's right. And you do that very, very well. So we've talked about how it impacted you. Can you tell us if there was any particular lessons or any particular lesson that your ancestor learned or took away from that or that he shared with you? Like, because I'm sure you couldn't say, oh, I hate school. Because I can
Yeah.
imagine what that conversation would be like. You know what happened and what we had to do to get to school?
Right, right. I just again the whole never quit philosophy, the persistence. That's we still talk about this with our family members to this day. The
Mm-hmm.
persistence and just keep going,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what's going on. Just keep moving, keep pushing forward.
Mm-hmm.
That tenacity, that's some real. That's real in
Mm-hmm.
our family. Even we had a Facebook discussion. I posted our cousin's
Mm-hmm.
history, and then my other cousins and my aunts and my uncles all chimed in to talk about that because we're very proud, very very proud what's of our history. And I can talk about something else too, but I'm gonna talk about that. So, in on another branch of our history, um,
Mm-hmm.
October 25th, 1870, in Greene County, um, Alabama. It's the anniversary of the Utah riots. My family survived a race riot on the other side. And,
Wow.
and we talk about that too, because people don't talk about race riots, but that
Mm-mm.
race riot had actually changed the trajectory of the of Jim Crow. It actually led to Jim Crow in Alabama. So there was a gubernatorial election, um, and the Republicans at the time, they were getting the black votes out. There was a rally going on. People from the other side came and they attacked them. They say on record 4 people died, but it was more,
Mm.
all African American,
Mm-hmm.
and it intimidated people from going out to vote. And that one event stopped black voters from coming out to vote in Greene County and in other counties throughout Alabama, and that led to a Confederate sympathizer becoming governor, and that ushered in Jim Crow in Alabama. So
Wow.
those things that's what we talk about, and I make it a point again to share that information with our children, to share that with my nieces and nephews, to talk about again, that just keep moving, keep on going, keep persistent, just don't let this stop you, because that's what they went through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're in that time right now where, and I shouldn't talk about politics, but I'll talk about it a little bit because that's just me, that people are using those same intimidation tactics, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily violence, but we've seen violence in January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a form of voter suppression and intimidation. So what's old is new again. It might be in a slightly different form, but it still exists today. So
Mm-hmm.
again, talking about that toughness, talking about that persistence, talking about the bravery that our folks have shown in the face of terror, um, in the face of white supremacy. It's uplifting to me. It's encouraging to me. It's a sense of pride to me, and it makes me feel fearless. It really does. My whole
And
family is like that. They feel this is.
I've been around you, Shanay. I know you guys are. Um, so I want to go back. So you said October 25th,
1870.
And what was the name of the community?
Yes, Utah. EUTAW, Utah Race Riot. In fact, what happened then is still impacting that area today.
And how so?
The limited amount, it took until the 1970s for a black person to be elected in the county.
Wow. Wow.
And there's such disparities because of that one event in
Mm-hmm.
1870, that there are still inequities that persist, that remain in place because of what happened in that event.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, race riots were started either to deter the vote,
Mm-hmm.
or to break up the community economically. And
Yes.
another is because of white womanhood,
Mm-hmm.
preservation of white womanhood, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that happened to my family, and we're still here.
And that is wonderful. And I just learned something new. And so thank you for sharing that, because when we think of race riots, we always talk about Tulsa. Not that it was the only one, because Detroit had its own race riot. And I'm sure there are other places around the country that have. However, because that's not some say, hey, this family survived and is thriving. And as you talked about persistence and never giving up, I think that's
I
very.
do, especially when they're feeling down about the system and what's going on in the world. I remind them this is what our ancestors have endured, and it's not to compare, but for them to have a better understanding of where we were compared to where we are right now.
So if you are meeting with the younger generation and they're like, oh, that's just history, this is now. These are the things that we're fighting for now. These are the things that we're working towards. What lesson or lessons would you pull from that to encourage young leaders for today?
What's old is new again. It's just repackaged differently. I also ask people to look up their own history. I tell everybody Black history is American history. I really mean
Mm-hmm.
that. In
Mm-hmm.
some ways, all of us who are descendants of enslaved Africans have some a history in their family. It could be
Mm-hmm.
the first of many.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to folks, and and I've done like ancestry genealogy for them, and I've pointed out things to them that their family would have never known about their family.
Mm-hmm.
I always use my husband as an example. Right after emancipation, his family was from Kennesaw, Georgia. Right
Okay.
after emancipation, his direct ancestor Stephen J. Talley had was a deacon and founded one of the first black churches, one of the oldest black churches in Georgia, and
Wow.
it's still there to this day. And his family members, Kenny's family members, my husband's family members, are still buried there, and they're buried there, and you can see their grave sites and everything. And then another part of his family, his mom's side, They are from Jones County. So you remember Jones County,
Mm-hmm.
Jones County, Mississippi.
Yes.
So the story of Jones.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it's based there.
Wow.
Yeah, so those little things that matter. And if your ancestor was involved in the Civil War, you can find records on them.
Mm-hmm.
If your ancestor was involved in the Revolutionary War, you can find records. I was fortunate enough to find one of my ancestors
Mm-hmm.
who happened to be free. Their Revolutionary War documents, their War 1812 documents, things like that, because it proves to you that we didn't just get here.
Mm-hmm.
We have like some stake in this, in this democracy. We have some stake in the way this country moves forward, and our ancestry is a part of us. It's in our DNA. So that history that they've been through, it's with us. So I tell people, don't reject that. It's a
Mm-hmm.
part of you. So if you're rejecting a part of you, then what's the point? And people don't like to reject any part of them, so they usually roll with it. And then when I talk to people and work with them through their ancestry, and they find out these things, then they're very like, whoa, I didn't know this. I'm very proud. And
Mm-hmm.
let me share this with our family members. And that's what they do. I thought my kids were indifferent to it. They're very much into it when I start talking about their ancestors. They're all in their 20s, so you think, oh, they don't care, blah blah blah. No, they do care. They do. And then they repeat it to their friends.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I have grandkids, they'll repeat it to their kids as well.
Very good.
Yep.
That's how you keep a legacy going. That's an amazing blessing. That is amazing gift to your family and to just a society in general.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to share that history and to be able to see it instilled in you and as you move forward in all the things that you do. So that's just amazing, Shanay. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And plus, I can help people get over that 1870 wall. Everybody gets stuck. Black folks get stuck on it. There are other ways to get around it. You know, Henry Louis Gates, he has his program. That's one way to look at that as a point of reference, but there are other ways to get past it. And people can, if they look hard enough, they can find it through state records, through local records, through county records, and everything. So you can really find out more about your ancestors and what
Awesome.
they've been through.
Awesome. Find you. And if anyone is interested in working with you on their genealogy and hiring you, tell us how they can reach you.
Oh, they can reach me on my Twitter account, LaFemme_Negrita. That's it. But occasionally, no. But occasionally I do tweet on genealogy and they do go viral. Especially when I talk about the Revolutionary War,
Mm-hmm.
a pre-Civil War history. Those
Just have a name and it'll be Brown. And we're like, okay, is that a first name or a last name? And
mhm.
because slavery, the records weren't complete, it does become daunting and difficult. And sometimes people decide to give up and you never go any further than where you got. So that is important.
Oh yeah, I put tips and tricks on my Twitter page when I don't feel like talking about politics and getting in the weeds. That's what I do. That's my happy place.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Everybody should know. I was raised in a family where we talked about history and we talked about our family history as well. But
Mhm.
I was always told you have to know where you've been so you know where you're going. You can't go anywhere in the future if you don't understand your past because the
Mhm.
mistakes of the past will catch up with you. And, a lot of times, like you said, what's old is new. I tell people there's nothing new under the sun.
Mhm.
It's been done already. It's just folks trying to be creative. So thank you, Shanay, for sharing and for coming on the Kim B. Davis show and talking to us. I know we'll have you on again in the future with another exciting update on politics because November is fast approaching. And so we will go ahead and digest after the elections and talk about what the outcomes were and see where we are actually headed.
No problem. We'll do. And I'm sorry that year it was September 25th, 1957. That's when my family did that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Awesome. Awesome. So thank you again, Shanay, for tuning in. Thank you guys
thank
for
you.
tuning in and Shanay for joining us. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, LinkedIn, everywhere on social media. And it's Kimberly Batchelor Davis, and Batchelor is spelled Batchelor. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can hear this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. You can learn more about me as an author at kimbdavis.com. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you'll join us on our next show. And always remember, be magnificent.